Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. This is the first video that I'm going to be posting on this channel, which is kind of scary. I do ASMR content on YouTube, but I've never done just normal chit chat content. But I need to start, okay, because I finished Throne of Glass on Monday. It is now Thursday, and I need to talk about it. So I've got like a 2-hour full spoilers included review going up on my ASMR channel, but I want to do like a beginner's kind of guide to how I would say you should read Throne of Glass. I love this series so much that I've not been able to pick up a book since I finished this series, but it also took me ages to actually start reading this series because of the discussion of where you should read each book. So I figured I would just go through, and from my point of view, after finishing it, after being one of those people, I want to talk about what I feel should be the way to do this series. It's not difficult either once you actually choose a way. But I personally think there is a right and wrong here. So yeah, I'm gonna say my opinion. So I got this series last September, and it's now April this year. I took a long time to read this series because I knew it was going to be special. As soon as I first read the first book that I chose to start with, I knew it was going to be special. And I did start with The Assassin's Blade, and I think everyone should. I get why people think, there's going to be a reveal, there's going to be this, that and the other, but I personally feel like you already kind of know what's going to happen. Throughout Throne of Glass, when I finally got to this book, I was confused because within like the first 100 pages or something, the whole plot, like key points of the plot are ruined, and I loved The Assassin's Blade, and I feel like it's really underrated and people kind of just chuck it in wherever. But no, I feel like it needs to go first because I genuinely don't think I would have liked Throne of Glass if I didn't know Selena as she was in the first book. And I know that's controversial. People are like, well, you deal with this and then you get the reveal, and then you go on to the rest of the series. So people will either read it in here, the third or the fourth spot, depending on when you want the biggest emotional impact. A lot of people put it, but guys, I cried my eyes out at The Assassin's Blade. I cried my eyes out at that before any of this happened. So I don't know, I feel like because this is her origin story, I don't know, it would feel wrong to go in and read it any other way. And even if when I reread this series, it's not going anywhere else. I'm not testing it out. This is not changing for me. This deserves to be first. And I feel like it is such a crucial part of the series, especially when you've read the full thing. You know that this is really, really big, and I just think it deserves to go first. And for me, these Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight are my least favourite in the series. This is a 4-star read for me. These are 3-star-ish at best. But these are very romance heavy, and this is a lot more plot driven for me, and I felt way more emotionally attached to the stories in this and what Selena goes through in this rather than what happens in here. I don't know, you get a very different version of Selena if you start with Throne of Glass. And I'm not saying that you're not going to enjoy the series if you do decide to do that, but for me personally, I just don't see how I would have connected with Selena's character if I started with Throne of Glass. Now, Throne of Glass, this series, I understood it to be not romance heavy going into it. I understood it to be heavy on the plot, heavy on the fantasy, and romance is a subplot. I feel like that for the first two books, for Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight, is not true. I feel like they are romance books, heavy on the romance, and then when you get to Heir of Fire, then we get to the actual plot-driven books. But I feel like starting with Throne of Glass, you just get a very different perspective of what the series is going to be and who your main character is. I feel like knowing her backstory for me was more impactful than the reveal being books and books later. And I hate as well, I sobbed and sobbed my eyes out at The Assassin's Blade, and you might still, if you choose to read it third or fourth, yeah, but you know what happens. You know what happens by then because it is revealed in those books, and I feel like that ruins it. I feel like the emotional impact for me would be taken away because you would know. So I feel like you need to read it first. You need to read it first because you are going to be impacted here, and then you go into the series, you know her, you feel her pain, you go through everything with her as it happens, and I just feel like that's the way it should be. So personally, you know, we're all different. I'm going to appreciate that. But I'm standing on my hill, and I think Assassin's Blade needs to be first. It is such a crucial book, and I loved this book so much. So it kind of, I don't know, I feel like it is ruined a bit when you leave it until third or fourth. I also think it's nice to be able to start from the starting point and go through without having any like kind of disruptions. I feel like I would have been thrown off if I had to read, you know, Heir of Fire and then go into like the backstory. I feel like that would have thrown me off. So that's another reason why I think Assassin's Blade is perfect at the start of the series, because you get all the information and you go in, and there's still so many reveals throughout this series. This is not the big secret, you know, there is so much. So there is still so many reveals the more you get into this series. It's crazy. Even when I finished Kingdom of Ash, I was like, how does Sergio Mas do this? It is crazy. Crazy work. No matter what book you're in, Sergio Mas has got something up her sleeve. You cannot be caught slacking in these books. They do not mess around. So I feel like Assassin's Blade needs to be at the start, because that reveal, guys, there's more to come, and it still shook me to my core. It is an amazing book in its own right, so I don't know why, you know, it just deserves to go first. It deserves to start the series, because other than that, I just don't think you're going to appreciate Throne of Glass or Crown of Midnight, and I didn't. The reason I stuck around is because I loved that first book and it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I knew our character going into these books where, you know, you get a different version of her, and I feel like it's needed. It's very crucial information for you to go into the series. So personally, I think it needs to go first. Now, I chose not to tandem read for Empire Storms and Tower of Dawn, and I'm so glad that I did just read them separately. Now, I know I've just said that I wouldn't want to be kind of like thrown back in time if I read Assassin's Blade in one of these positions, and I stand by that because you're still getting into the plot there, and I feel like it's very different, you know, to be going from Heir of Fire to the Assassin's Blade feels wrong for me. So even though I said that, I still stand by Empire Storms and Tower of Dawn should be read separately, because even though these are two books that are set at the same time and just different characters in different locations, I think it would be far too confusing at that point. A very crucial point of the book series to be switching back and forth. Now, will I tandem read them in the future? Absolutely, I'm very curious. However, I just think when you're first reading this through, they deserve to be their own stories because they are so different, but amazing, amazing books in their own right. Tower of Dawn is genuinely like my like fourth or fifth favourite in this series. But from Heir of Fire to here, it's very, very close. This is a 4-star read for me, and I loved Tower of Dawn, so don't be scared of Tower of Dawn, because I really, really was, but I'm not anymore. I actually really, really loved this book, but saying that, I loved Empire Storms, but it's completely different, and I think it would have been so jarring to be experiencing these things at the same time. The pacing, the plot, everything is different. Everything is different, and I feel it's unnecessary to read them. Your first read through, I feel like they deserve to be separated. I am curious though to see what it's like to tandem read, but obviously I can't say, tandem reading is the worst, it's not going to work out. Fully appreciate that people will want to do that. I want to try it at some point as well, but I think for your first read through, they need to be separated because they are both such good books that they deserve to be appreciated in their own zone, in their own separate space. I also think that Tower of Dawn is actually a really, really nice breath of fresh air after you finish Empire of Storms. Empire of Storms is a great book, but it is heavy stuff going on in there, and as I said, Tower of Dawn is very, very different, and I loved having that kind of breather before you go into Kingdom of Ash, because having finished Kingdom of Ash on Monday, guys, I'm still struggling. This is an arm workout, so I'm going to put it down now, but now that I've finished that huge final book, I'm even more happy that I read Tower of Dawn as its own book beforehand, because Kingdom of Ash it's a thick book, and it's got so much plot going on that you don't get a breather. So I feel like Tower of Dawn is perfectly intertwined in the series at the very point right before the final book for that breath of fresh air. Yes, I read it probably faster than I read some of my more favourite books in the series, because I was so desperate to find out what happened, because Empire Storms ends on a cliffhanger. But I don't think that ending on a cliffhanger should make you, think you need to tandem read them. Cliffhangers are great. And it made me very, very emotionally invested in what was going on, both in Tower of Dawn and what I knew was going on back in the other location with the other characters. So I just feel like they deserve their own time. And even though I am going to, try tandem reading, and I can't say whether or not it is going to be better, maybe I'll change my mind, maybe I will. But right now, I am so happy with how I read this series, starting with The Assassin's Blade and not tandem reading. I think I am so at peace, even though I could literally burst into tears right now because I love this series so much, and I can't believe I've finished it and that I've got no more books with these characters. I'm literally grieving these characters right now. But I could not recommend this series enough. This is my new favourite fantasy series, and I knew that from the halfway point. After I read Heir of Fire, I was like, this is different. This is built different. So it's going to be very, very hard to top, but I'm now on a journey of trying to find more books like this. So of course I will be bringing you guys along how I fix my Throne of Glass hangover, because I've not picked up a book since, and it's like a hole in my heart after this series. This is different, this is everything. And these characters, once you get hooked, you're not going back, you're in deep. So I cannot genuinely recommend you starting this series enough. I bought this series as a recommendation, and I'd been putting it off, even though I knew it was going to be great. I'd been putting it off for so long because I was so worried about reading it the wrong way or regretting reading it a certain way, or, you know, I was just so overwhelmed, and I'd done so much research and so much reading up about it, and I decided to go with Assassin's Blade at the start, and I wholeheartedly have zero regrets. And I know people will say that about reading it third or fourth, but I personally just couldn't picture myself reading it then. I feel like it deserves to start the series because it is such a good book, and I feel like I had a better understanding and a better appreciation for the story going in from that point, and I just think the flow of things would be weird if I read it anywhere else. I like starting from where it does in the Assassin's Blade. And I know the Assassin's Blade is made up of 5 like novellas technically, so it might be a bit weird to start with that. Certainly that's the type of book that you would have further into a series usually, but I just think it is slotted in perfectly there, and it is so satisfying after you've finished the entire series. I'm so satisfied, and I just don't think it's given enough credit for the book that it is, and I just couldn't picture reading it anywhere else. So my wholehearted recommendation is that you start with Assassin's Blade, then you read Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Ear of Fire, Queen of Shadows, and then you don't tandem read, you read Empire Storms, Tower of Dawn, and then finish with Kingdom of Ash. And I think you are going to have the best journey ever, and you are going to experience everything with that main character, and you are going to be so attached, and you are going to cry, and you are going to be distraught when it finishes, but it's going to be the best thing ever. And it's not the end, you know, it might be for these characters, but there's so many other fantasy series out there. And I feel like that's what I'm just telling myself, that even though I've finished this and I'm really sad about it, I'm really, really excited because now I can actually open myself up to more books as well. Because I started reading this last September and I took my time. I enjoyed this series as slowly and as meticulously as I possibly could. I took notes on my notes app, and yeah, I really just like dug deep into this series. Didn't rush through it. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I read it in X amount of time, but I just wanted to sit and enjoy this series, and I'm so happy I did, because now that I'm finished, I'm like, wow, that was an experience, that was a journey. But yeah, I'm glad I didn't rush it, and I feel like I would have been left quite upset with myself, because you only get to read this once. You only get one shot at the first time, and I feel like that's why I'm so dead set on the Assassin's Blade going first, because the experience that I had, I would not change, and I feel like I got the most out of this series, and I'm so happy I didn't put it anywhere else. I'm so happy. I feel like it just needs to go first. It needs to. So I'm saying my piece. I'm saying my piece. But yeah, I could not recommend you read this enough. That is the bottom line. Because this is the best series. It's the best. So yeah, I hope this video helped at least someone out there who is struggling with what order they should read this series. I know it's a very daunting thing, especially with a series this big. I have never read a fantasy series this big, let alone any series maybe. Yeah, I think the max I've maybe read is like a 5-book series or something like that. So this is like the biggest and the most attached I've ever got to any characters before. So just take my advice. Just take a breather. Just read the Assassin's Blade first and everything will be okay. You will cry, you will be really upset with me, but it is the best way and it's the best experience once you get into it. So yeah, and don't tandem read on your first read is what I would say. I just feel like it complicates matters when you don't need to already complicate, you know, for separate books, just appreciate them in their own right. Yes, that's enough yapping from me. You need to go and buy Throne of Glass right now so that you can wallow in this pit of despair with me. because yeah, everybody needs to read this series. I read Akatar and did not realise that this was going to be miles and miles and worlds above it. So if you read Akatar and you've not read this, get onto Amazon right now. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as I said, I hope at least some of you that have found this video feel a bit more at ease about starting Throne of Glass, because it is a big one, you know, it's a big decision, but it doesn't have to be, so yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, you should follow along because it's a new channel, and I'm going to be doing a lot of book content because I adore books and they are like my life. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will hopefully see you in the next one. Bye!